So welcome to Investing for Value. So we're talking about Virgin Galactic, and the most anticipated part about this stock is the launch date. So there's a lot of value to be built in once they have a launch date and once they get someone into space. So there's a lot of anticipation for this, and I think I already have a date in mind. I've written it here, 18th of July, and I'll explain why I think this is the date. But before we get there, we're going to talk about a few numbers. So right now they have about 600 bookings, and 600 bookings at $250,000. That's 150 million in revenue right there. And then they have about 3,500 expression of interest. So like if those follow through as well, we have about 875 million in revenue as well from there. So we're talking about $1 billion in revenue for this company if they can actually get someone into space, if they can have a successful launch and they can get that expression of interest to convert to actual bookings. We're looking at a company that has a line of $1 billion in revenue, which is incredible. The minute they can scale up, because they're still only going to have, firstly they've got one spaceship that's already, it's been tested, it's good to go. They've got a second spaceship that's just being completed in its build, because they've got a thing called weight on wheels where the spacecraft can basically support itself on its wheels, on its landing gears, and then basically the second spaceship just has to be tested, and then it's good to go. And then they've got a third one which is 50% complete. So these guys, as I've said, they are ahead of time. But I don't think they want to speed things too quick. So they'll still keep to the timeline they have in their mind. But that kind of gives you an idea of where they're at and what kind of revenue stream is coming their way if they can prove this in a very successful way. Never mind Blue Origin or SpaceX coming in, because a lot of people are like, oh well, there's a lot of competition from these other two companies. But it doesn't really matter, because those two companies are really focused on something more extreme. SpaceX is trying to help NASA send astronauts into space. And in Blue Origin, they're not quite concrete on what they really want to do yet. They're still testing things out. But the fact that Virgin Galactic has 600 in bookings and then another 3,500 in expression of interest, that kind of already gives you an idea that, hey, even if there was competition, it wouldn't matter. Virgin Galactic is going to earn a lot of money from this, but of course they need to get that launch date, and that's the most important part. So why do I have 18th of July as the date? Because firstly, the CEO, George Whiteside, has consistently expressed that they are aiming for the middle of the year launch. So get this one right, the middle of the year. So this date here, July, is the middle of the year. So that kind of gives you a very clear idea that, hey, if it's not this date, it's probably something really close. And then he's also talked about how Richard Branson would love to fly into space when he's 70. So I'm imagining that the guy you're flying first into space, you also want to do it in a good way. So why don't you do it on his birthday? Do you see where I'm going? So this date here is actually Richard Branson's birthday. So if you think about Richard Branson and the way he likes to build himself up, market his products, he usually does it in a special way, and he usually does it on very key dates, big, it has to be really well defined for this guy. And the reason, Virgin Galactic to Richard Branson means his legacy. He wants to be credited for sending people into space. So what better like time to send him into space and on his 70th birthday, because this is a guy that loves the media, he loves the highlight, and he loves to be remembered. But I mean, he's still a very humble guy, so don't get me wrong about that. But I would say Richard Branson wants to be sent into space on his 70th. If you're someone who just built, like a space company, and then your 70th is coming up, and you want to be remembered for everything you've been doing, and you also want the media, and the 70th is a big birthday milestone. So I would say Richard Branson, he wants to celebrate it in a big way. And and you also want to consider, like, say, like, if you reach your 70th, that's when you've kind of reached a milestone, and you can take more risk. So I would say he's going to do it on his birthday. They haven't announced it yet because I guess they don't want to put too much pressure on this date. But the CEO has already said they want to do it in the middle of the year. And then they've talked about Richard Branson, that this year is, his 70th birthday. It's Virgin Galactic's 50th anniversary. So they really, well, not Virgin Galactic, Virgin Group is 50th anniversary. So there's kind of like few key features that they want to, go through, that they want to make this year being the year. So I think they should be able to get this year no problem. But the matter is, what date are they going for? And I'd say it's going to be 18th of July, based on all the hints and clues that were being given. If not, it's going to be very similar, because at the end of the day, like, they could have delays, or like maybe the weather isn't perfect. So like they don't want to do something on a day that's not perfect. But I imagine it's going to be very close. If it's not this date, it's going to be like a week before or after, because they're going to try to choose something close to this date. They want to make it really special for Richard Branson. And I'm imagining what better, like, if you imagine that you're Richard Branson and you think, what's the best way to celebrate your 70th? Well, that would just be this. Like, it would be going up into space. There's no better gift than to celebrate a launch on your birthday. So let me know if you think I'm right about this, or if you have any other date in mind. But that kind of gives me a lot of confidence to say, on the 7th month, which is basically about 6 more months to go, we're possibly watching Virgin Galactic send someone into space. But of course, they would probably announce it 3 months before, or even a bit more before that. So we'll find out if this is the date. It should be quite interesting. Keep an eye on the stock, because the stock is at a 3 billion valuation right now, and as I just said at the start of the video, they're looking at $1 billion in revenue if they can, like, get things right just off the bat. They've got enough people wanting to line up to, and those are the people that are willing to risk, like, things. Like, it's kind of like if I was to ask you if you want to go to space, and I said, oh, there's a lot of risks involved, a lot of people, it's not really as proven, then you might be hesitant. But we've already got close to 4,000 people who are pretty interested, they don't mind the risk, because for them, space means a lot. Getting into space means a big dream, a big goal. And those are the people who are, happy to go through with it. So it's kind of like when the iPhone came out, this was an unproven product, and this was a product that cost a lot. But there's a lot of people who are interested in buying it. So we're looking at this first crowd. But then we're going to have the second crowd. When the iPhone 2 came out, you've got the second crowd. But that, that second crowd still finds it expensive. And then after that, we're going to have the third crowd, the fourth crowd. And then eventually everyone's going to be finding their way into space, and everyone's going to be able to talk about it. just like how everyone kind of has iPhones these days. Or some people might just be like, why would you want to spend that much on a space trip when you could just go to Europe or someplace and just have a really, like, have a fantastic holiday at a tenth the cost? So it might, like, how do you look at it? Because I'm looking at it as this big opportunity, whereas, like, I could be delusional. You could view it that way, but for me, I'm always basing my things on numbers and on what things can be worth. Like, you look at SpaceX, and SpaceX is, upwards of 30 billion, probably closer to like 40 billion these days, um, and if not 50 billion in the future for SpaceX, and that's SpaceX. So for Virgin Galactic, these guys are building very similar capabilities, and you would expect that, hey, maybe they would be worth a bit more than $3 billion. So there's a bit of upside, for the stock, in terms of like what they can do, in terms of the market they will control, because basically these guys are gonna go this year, and we do not know what the other two space companies are going to do. I don't think SpaceX is interested in coming into the consumer market, and I imagine Blue Origin may be interested. But the one thing that the Virgin Group itself does really well at, that's service. So, like, if you look at how Virgin has managed to disrupt everything, how they've managed to come into a lot of different industries and do a really good job, is because they supply some of the best services available. If you're paying a lot of money for a flight into space, you kind of want it to be pretty well organized, to get the top service available. You don't want an Amazon service, You don't want, like, Jeff Bezos may not be able to cater that type of service. He might give you a better cost, who knows? But he will not be able to match their service, because the one thing that Virgin Group does really well at is service. They do service greater than most people can, because they think outside of the box, and they hire people who don't actually think about it in that way. Jeff Bezos is good at things. He's good at the tech side. He's good at efficiencies. But I don't think he's a guy that delivers the top line service. He's really good with, like, building a tech. He's really good at optimizing, delivering things quicker than everyone else, or in a very good time frame. But I'd say Virgin will still win in the service, and right now that's kind of what they're focused on. And I imagine if you have Richard Branson kind of going on the first flight, you've already got this kind of like trust and reliability built into it. Whereas if Blue Origin tries to do it, there's no trust built into Blue Origin right now. And then they're going to have to spend a bit of time building that. Because at the end of the day, like, you got to consider, you're spending a lot of money, but never mind the money, you're also putting your life on the line. So you want something that really works. You don't want something that can possibly fail. So that's kind of like those are big things most people would be considering. So that's why I'm talking, like, why Virgin Galactic's going to just be the company to invest in, the company to fly with. And if this data is correct, we could be looking at a very, very good reward if you're a stockholder on the 18th of July. And we could also just be looking at a lot, like, as a big milestone as society, as humans, that we can finally get into space regularly. Any average person can get into space, and how remarkable would that be? So, like, if you're a fan of space, like, never mind being an investor, you'd just be ecstatic about the milestones that's about to be achieved. So we'll keep an eye on this date, 18th of July, and we'll see if that's correct, or if it's within like a week or two of it. I think it's definitely going to be close to this, I think why would Richard Branson want to go when when he's 69? He probably wants to go when he's 70, right? He wants to celebrate his 70th. But we never know. Like he might like there might be like a timeline thing, but I think this company happened because of Richard Branson, and they're going to try to make it special. Like if you watch the CNBC interview with George Whiteside on there, he talks it in a way that he wants to make it special for Virgin Group. He wants to make it special for Richard Branson. And this date is the one to really prove it. So I think he's going for that. But they've still got a lot of work to do, of course. But mind you, they already have one spacecraft that's already complete. It's already been tested, and they would basically be ready to fly. But I guess they want the second one so they can switch between spaceships in terms of trying to get passengers into space, because they're looking at about 16 flights this year. 16 flights. Like if they started in July, that gives them about that gives them about just about 5 months. So 5 months to execute 16 flights, which would be about 3 flights a month, or about just over a week for each flight. And that's a lot of preparations to do. So they need enough spaceships to change between. They can't just be flying the same one over and over. Well, not in a very short time. They need time to prepare these spaceships. So yeah, let me know if you think this is the correct date, or if you kind of find, that, yeah, if, and also if you're an investor, I'd like to know what kind of company I'm with. As any of you investors, or any of you find this date to be credible? Have you read Richard Branson's books? Have you learnt about the guy that kind of, whenever he launches a product, he does it in a spectacular way. This guy is, someone who will put his life on the line to prove that his product works. So I definitely look forward to that. Until that, I look forward to more updates as they come along. Might be a while before there's too many updates on Virgin Galactic, but once we get closer to the middle of the year, regardless, their aim is the middle of the year, and if close to that, there should be a lot of stuff coming out. Even next month, there'll be a lot of financial data that's about to be released, and I imagine they'll either hint at a date, or they'll let you know about the progress. So right now they're looking at moving their spaceships to New Mexico. That once they get that to New Mexico, they can begin testing, and then they'll have a pretty good idea on their timeline. But I'd say this is what they're aiming for. So until then, yeah, good luck investing.